As a manager, it is your responsibility to do everything in your power to correct an employee's poor behavior or performance before terminating them. This is in their best interest and in the hospital's best interest as well. Efforts to counsel and correct an employee's behavior take place during what is sometimes referred to as the recovery process. This recovery process includes the steps you use when helping employees improve and overcome their problems. The act of managing a staff should include the regular correction of mistakes and encouragement for things done well. This consistent leadership style often eliminates the need for formal confrontations with staff over mistakes. Even the best staff managers, however, must formally correct and sometimes fire misdirected employees on occasion. During the remainder of this section, we will look at an example of a situation that leads to termination. Key principles for properly terminating a staff member will be highlighted throughout this example. In our scenario, Jim, who is a technician, is having difficulties at work. He frequently fails to complete routine tasks, and he leaves work undone for other staff members to finish. The manager has mentioned to him that he must complete all of his work prior to leaving, and he nods in understanding. Jim has been a valuable employee in the past, but his coworkers are now complaining that he does not pull his weight. Jim has been an outstanding technician in his 4 years with the practice, but he is now beginning to slip into a rut. Does this sound familiar? All hospitals have had employees that from time to time forget to do their job. By applying management techniques that aim at correcting problems before they become major, termination may be avoidable. But what if the problem does not go away? As a manager, you must confront such repeated problems in a formal meeting. This closed-door meeting provides a serious yet private environment for correcting an employee's behavior. This meeting should be focused on helping the employee to understand and correct the problem. While the manager is counseling Jim, Jim reveals that there are difficulties at home and that he and his wife have not been getting along. While the manager's job description does not include family counseling, it is in the job description to keep the employees motivated and productive. In this case, the manager may want to suggest that Jim receive outside counseling for his problems. In a kind manner, he is reminded that he must distinguish between his personal life and professional performance. In addition, the manager lets Jim know what the potential consequences may be should his behavior and performance not improve. Although it is not the manager's intention to fire Jim at this point, Jim must realize that if his work does not improve, he may be terminated. This is an important step in the recovery process. It should never come as a surprise to an employee when they are fired for poor performance. A good manager will correct problems before they become serious. These corrections will help to redirect the employee before an official meeting must be called. When an official warning is to be given, be careful to record a description of what was said and what objectives were laid out during this session. This is sometimes called a letter of expectation. A letter of expectation should be read and signed by both you and the employee. An opportunity for the employee to add or comment on the content of this letter should be provided. This step is important and shows the employee that you are serious but also willing to help him or her change. From this step on, you should be sure to document all instances where the employee continues his or her poor performance. Take detailed notes and be sure to date them. This information will be essential in the event that you run into any legal pitfalls during or after termination. It also acts as proof that you have observed these behaviors and have attempted to help the employee throughout this process. Back in our sample situation, Jim seemed to improve initially after his first counseling session. After a couple weeks, however, he reverts back to his poor work performance. Once again, the manager must bring Jim into her office for another meeting. She begins this meeting by telling Jim that she's noticed that his job performance is still inadequate. Jim explains that he is still being troubled by many of the same problems outside of work. It is at this point that being a manager can be particularly difficult. The manager is torn between the feeling of sympathy for a man who is obviously troubled and the responsibility to the practice and the other employees. She must remain firm and clear in her resolve. She relays to Jim that although she understands the problems that he is going through, she cannot continue to employ a staff member who cannot meet their job requirements. It is at this point that the manager should reinforce that if no immediate improvement is made, he will be fired from his position. A frequent mistake that managers often make during this process is not being clear as to what is expected from the employee. Be certain to clearly define the changes that must be made in a letter that is signed and dated by both you and the employee. This should be titled a letter of warning. This title will show the severity of this letter when compared to the letter of expectation that should have been previously issued. 3 weeks pass and Jim is showing signs of improvement. But as quickly as the problem disappeared, it begins again. Jim continues his poor performance and leaves the manager with no other choice but termination. With the help of the practice owner, the manager has decided that Jim should be dismissed. Before we discuss the procedure for terminating Jim's employment, let's review the facts. Jim has been a long-term employee who until recently performed well. The manager has had numerous informal talks with Jim about improving. The manager has had 2 formal meetings with Jim. The manager has outlined the problem and the consequences of the problem in 2 written letters.